Hey, good morning. We'll be starting in just a minute. Just to remind you, this is Majors Chapel, so this is business majors. I mean, you can stay if you're not, but just make sure. I know I've had several people and that were confused about being here. So thank you.
Good morning. Oh, we're somewhat awake. Good morning. So excited to be here this morning for business majors in this chapel time. I'm going to go ahead and get us started this morning with a prayer. So if you would bow your heads with me, and then we'll move on after this. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this beautiful day. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today for our guest speaker, Paul Winkler. Thank you for all the things that you have done for us in this past couple of days, Lord. And we just still pray to you and lift up the children and families from Covenant School. Lord, we thank you that you have kept us safe, that you continue to watch over and provide for us. Lord, we ask that the words that are spoken today by Paul Winkler are honorable and pleasing to you, Lord, and that our conversations are also pleasing to you, Lord. May you watch over us and continue as we go and continue about our day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for doing that. My name's Professor Greg Runyon. I'm going to kind of get us going here. I'll bring up Dr. Agee real quick. We've got some wonderful books from Paul this morning, our speaker. One is Confident Investing, and one is Confident Financial Planning. There's a theme there, I think. But anyway, Jay's going to give these away. So go ahead, Jay. You want to have this?
Alrighty, so we've had a long tradition of many years for doing this, and then COVID kind of put an end to it for a while because we hadn't been doing a lot of these. So here's the thing. I'm going to call something out, and if this applies to you, then you got to be the first one up here. All right? Don't be bashful. Don't be bad. That light is bright. All right, here's the thing. First one, are you wearing, any of you, shirt, hat, anything, Nashville SC? There we go. There we go. Bring it. Bring it. Bring it. That works. That works. All right, my son, he knows that I'm not really in tune with pop culture, so he tried to help me a little bit with these, some of these. Anyway, all right, who has on their phone an app for Roblox? Apparently, my son is not very up with pop culture. All right, very good. Let's see. We want to recognize the person who each day has the furthest commute. All right, so if anyone commutes more than 50 miles, anybody? More than 50 miles? More than 40 miles? All right, I talked to a student earlier this semester who came from Macon County. All right, you need a plane to come from there. Come on, that person there. 30 miles. Are there any commuters here? All right. How far? All right, Blomberg told the best joke in class yesterday. I asked, what is a leader? We were talking about leadership. What is a leader? Everybody's quiet. He raises his hand. He goes, a unit of measurement. You guys got it a lot quicker than I did. I was looking at him like, what is wrong with you? Then I was like, well done. I'm going to steal that as a dad joke. All righty. Everybody who's had me in class knows that I'm a huge Vandy fan. It's a sad, sad existence, but I'm a huge Vandy fan. Anyone wearing any Vandy shirts, hats, anything? I know most people don't want to be seen with that, but we got a good baseball team and women's bowling team. That hurts. Anyone has the Southwest app on their phone? All right, first one. There we go. All right, Greg, how many more do you want here? Two more? All right. Who has the Disney World app on their phone? Not the Disney Plus app, like the actual Disney World app that you get. All right. Dr. Smith is in the office next to me, and for past few years, I've had to listen to the music he plays, so I've been trying to teach him good music from the 80s. Do any of you have a Billy Joel song in your playlist? I saw Miss Melton's hand back up there first. Well done. You get an A right there. All right. Very good. All right. This might be the last one. How many of you have an old school, and it can't be your Trevecca ID, that doesn't count, have an old school, like, public library card? All right, we got two. Come on up. All right, very good. You got to show us, though. You got to show us. You got to prove it. We got three. Coming up. That works.
Good stuff. Yeah, Jay, thanks so much. You've definitely lost your edge because of COVID, but good job. Anyway, thank you so much. Let's give him a round. All right. I want to recognize our seniors graduating in May or August or even next December. Would you please stand? Let's give them a round of applause. Come on, we got to have some here. Come on, guys. All right, we got a few. Yeah. All right. Good stuff, and we wish you the best, of course. Graduation will be here before you know it. Thanks everyone for being here. I think you're going to enjoy today's speaker, but Dr. Hyatt's going to come up and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Professor Runyon. Good morning. Good to see everyone out today. So it is exciting to have Mr. Paul Winkler here. And I think you'll be, if you haven't read his bio already, I think you'll be impressed. So Paul is the founder of Paul Winkler, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm with 10 offices in Middle Tennessee and 1 in Texas. His firm manages about $1 billion in client assets. He is a serial collector of educational degrees and credentials. His undergraduate degree was in economics. He is also a chartered financial consultant, chartered life underwriter, chartered advisor in senior living, life underwriter training council fellow, retirement income certified professional, registered financial consultant, accredited asset management specialist, and wealth management certified professional. In addition, he is finishing his master's degree in marriage and family therapy here at Trevecca and graduates in May. He does individual and marriage counseling at the Babb Center in Hendersonville. He is the host of the Investor Coaching Show on 99.7 WTN. That's a show that's been around for over 22 years. For fun, he plays the drums for several bands in Nashville and does photography. He's been married to his wife, Deborah, for over 30 years, and they have 2 sons, Alex and Andrew. So please welcome Mr. Paul Winkler.
Well, thanks, everybody. I probably would be more comfortable up here, believe it or not, with a drum set, but, here I am with a microphone. So I took a couple notes just things that I might talk about, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how to, I guess it was live a life and have a career without regret was my thought in speaking with all of you, because I know you're all business majors and probably want to know what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And I would love to know how many people really know what they're going to do with the rest of their life in this room. I mean, really. I was 25, I had no clue, and I got out of school. And there's so much pressure on younger people right now because we're finding that technology and the speed of life is moving so fast that a lot of times we just don't even know what we want to be until we're much older. Used to be you kind of figured it out when you were 14 when everybody worked on the farm. And one of the things that a lot of times people will ask me, I've been doing this radio show for a long time, so I'm used to speaking for 3 hours. Keeping in 30 minutes is going to be really kind of fun. But it's success. How do you get success? How do you end up being successful as a business person? What do you do? And the reality of it is success is defined in so many different ways. It's not just money, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. You could have somebody that's a missionary, you could have somebody that's a pastor of a church, and they could be incredibly successful and incredibly broke. It really doesn't matter a whole lot, and there are a lot of ways to get to success, and it's how we define it. And a lot of times how we define it is our parents, our upbringing, who we grew up around. Matter of fact, there's a really interesting piece of research that talks about how kids turn out. And how kids turn out is not necessarily driven so much by parenting as it is genetics to some extent, but interestingly, also who you introduce your kids to if you're a parent. So what neighborhoods you grew up in. Because what ends up happening is a lot of times we don't necessarily, and you guys can probably relate to this, don't necessarily listen to our parents that well. When we're 14, 15, literally there's something in your brain. I learned this in psychology. Watch what you learn in these psychology classes. Our brains actually tune out our parents' voices, and we tend to tune in strangers and people around them. So what ends up happening is our definition of success can come from all of that. Now, a lot of times people say, well, Paul, I want to be in business for myself. I want to start a business, and I think that's what success is. And a lot of times what I do with people when I'm talking about investing is I'll say, okay, who are the most successful people that you know in the world? Who are the most successful? And what names come to mind? I want you guys just yell out a name of somebody that you think of as successful. Elon Musk. I heard it. Who else? Bezos, good. All right. Bill Gates, all right. So one of those things, all of those people have one thing in common. They're all business owners, right? And I often talk about investing. You get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. So a lot of times I'm talking about that very thing. But a lot of times you're looking at going, it's way before investing for me. I want to talk about career. And the reality of it is there are two different ways that we can typically approach a career in general. I can be self-employed or I can be employed by somebody else. And I remember doing Toastmasters, good grief, 30 years ago. And one of the first speeches I ever gave was on that particular topic. And I said, you know what, when you're self-employed and you own your own business like me with 10 offices around here and one in Texas, you have hundreds and hundreds of bosses. But when you're employed by a company, you have, typically one boss. Maybe you're in a department, so you have more than one boss. But the reality of it is every last one of you will be self-employed. And if you can think of your world in that way, you're going to be a lot better off. So you're going to be thinking about what your job is going to be to serve somebody else and find a problem and fix it. Matter of fact, there was a guy that wrote a book called The E-Myth, Entrepreneurial Myth. And one of the things that he talked about in that book is he would go out and do speaking engagements. And he would do this for people that wanted to be self-employed. And he angered the people that hired him because he would literally talk them out of being self-employed. And what would happen is they'd leave and go, I came here to learn how to be self-employed. And you just taught me that, what self-employment really meant. So what a lot of times I'm doing with people that are thinking about, I want to be employed by myself, is I'm going to teach you what he taught. And he said, basically what a company is this. You've got 4 parts of a company. You've got the CEO of the company. That's going to be the direction. What are we going to do? What problem are we going to solve? And that's what he used to do. He would take people in the audience and he'd pair them up and he says, hey, you, I want you to talk to the person next to you and tell them what you do for a living. And you, on the right, I want you to tell that person what would frustrate you about dealing with that person. Your job is to solve that person's frustrations. So your job is to take whatever is out there that frustrates you in working in the world and go, I'm going to fix that problem. And that's the essence of being a business owner, fixing a problem. I would have employees come up to me and go, hey, Paul, I got a problem. And I go, no, you got an opportunity. Because now you've got an opportunity to fix a problem of somebody else. And a lot of times we go through life trying to avoid problems, right? And the reality of it is, no, we ought to embrace them because that's what we're here for. So basically, you have the CEO that says, okay, here's what the company's going to be doing, what it's going to look like. Here's the problem we're going to solve. Here's the thing that we want to make better for people. And often what we got to do is we got to become really others-centered. We got to really focus on other people and get outside of ourselves. One of the things I always tell my employees, quit thinking about yourself. The only person I want you to think about is that person you're with, because your problems are going to be solved if you solve their problems. Zig Ziglar, actually, he was a motivational speaker, used to say that. You can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. So that's the CEO. Then you have the marketing of the company. What are we going to tell people that we do? How are we going to convey that message? What is it that we're doing, and how are people going to, and why are people going to come to us? Then you have operations. What does the business do? Then you have over here, you have accounting. And the problem with most businesses, it's like 80, these guys could probably tell you better than me how many businesses fail. It's a high percentage. But the reason they fail is because you're trying to do all four. You know, you're trying to be the CEO of the company, and you get out there and doing the marketing. When you're doing the marketing, you don't have any time for the operations. And when you're doing the operations, you can't market the company. And there should be a natural tension between all of these things. The marketing people should be going to the operations people, you guys got to produce something better. You know, I'm frustrated. I'm out there trying to sell your stuff, and it stinks. We need to make this thing better. And the operations people ought to be going, you guys are promising way too much. We can't possibly deliver all that. And the accounting people should be saying, you guys just shut up and quit arguing and quit spending so much money. That's the idea. You got that natural tension. So what you want to do, typically, let's say that if you love, for example, you love plumbing. He told somebody, this Gerber is the guy I'm talking about, Michael Gerber. He said, go into hairdressing. And I said, go into hairdressing? What? He says, yeah, because you won't be tempted to do the work of the business. If you're running a company, you kind of fall out of love of doing the work of the business. But in reality, I do a little bit of everything in just pieces so that I stay in tune with my company. And the way I started as a stockbroker, an investment advisor, quote unquote. And what happened, I studied under a guy, and I was banging my head against the wall. I was so frustrated with things as they were in the investment industry. And one day I was just like despondent. I was like, this is not working. And what ended up happening was this guy goes, hey, you know, you ought to go study on these guys. One guy, I think he's going to win the Nobel for economics. And I said, okay. I got a set of CDs, or they were tapes actually, cassette tapes. That's how old I am. And I was listening to him and going, wow, this guy makes sense. And what ended up happening was I was listening to it, and I said, I got to go study under this guy. And I was making less than $20,000 a year. I had one child at the time. My wife and I were living in a 3,000 square foot house. Don't ask how on earth we were able to afford that, because I was a good financial planner. And then what ended up happening, I went and I just dropped everything. But I said, I'm not going to leave my business. I'm going to continue to do this, and I did what I wanted to do on the side. Now, a lot of people go and they say, I'm going to burn the ships out in the harbor, and I'm going to go do this. I'm going to tell you a lot of times what you're going to do. You're going to find that what you do for a living is going to be based on maybe what you've already done, but you're going to build it a little bit on the side, and that's what I did. And what ended up happening is I started the company. I had one office, 566 square feet. Then I went and I was doing this. I was chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. A great way to meet people, I'm going to tell you, is get involved in your community. I became the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. I met some marketing people, and one of the guys goes, dude, you ought to be like on the radio. I mean, you're teaching all of this investing stuff, and this is fascinating. You ought to be on the radio. So I said, oh, great, how do you do that? And he says, pick up the phone, call a program director, and then tell them what you want to do. And this guy goes, we don't take a show like this. Yeah, you can go call in. I told him what station would. He told me a station that would. I went on that station for 2 months, and then somebody called me from a competing station. It was 50,000 watts, and said, we want your show. And then when I said, oh, okay, great. I went there, talked to them, and they said, yeah, we have this show. The cost to do a show is $25,000 a year. I was like, great, I make 20. This is really going to work out really well. And there's a lesson in this I'm going to get to. I was driving back, and I said to my wife, I said, Deb, oh my gosh, they want $25,000 to do this show. You know what we make. I can't afford this. And she says, well, did they give you any light at the end of the tunnel? I said, they said they'd give me 7 minutes of advertising that I could sell. And she says, you're an idiot if you don't do this. Lesson, listen to your wife or husband or spouse. And what happened is I said, okay, and I just found a way to do it. But the lesson was that God opens doors, and my job is to walk through them, because I was scared to death. And I gave a speech about this one time that I'm going to get to. I'm going to get to little pieces of a lot of different things. But what ended up happening, I walked through the door, and then I got on that station for 4 years, and then the very biggest 100,000 watt station in town called up and said, we want your show. And I said, great. I went over there, and I got on there, and I hadn't looked back since. And I ended up growing to 10 offices. It was huge. But what happened was this. I would walk through doors. And one day I got called up to do a commencement speech for a university. And they said, what do you want to speak about? And I go, I don't know. What do you want me to speak about? I said, I don't know, whatever you want. And I said, okay, great. I said, what would be really good for young people to hear is this. There was a study of people age 90 and above. And they said, if you could live your life over again, what would you do differently? I love those types of speeches. I think that's cool. And what they did is they said, first of all, I would take more risk. That was the first lesson I taught the group. And I said, okay, so what's going on here? We tend to live life like we're trying to make it safely to death. And there is no such thing as making it safely to death. Now, you don't take foolish risks. Like I worked for that company that sold health insurance, but all the time I was building this investment business based on Nobel Prize. The guy did win the Nobel Prize for economics, by the way, in 2013, after my wife said for years, he's not going to win the Nobel Prize. Would you quit talking about it? And finally he did, so I was right once. It's the only time I was ever right. So what happened was I ended up building it on that. But that was it. People try to do things that I don't want to take too much risk, and they don't step out, and they don't ever get into their gifting. And that was another lesson. Somebody said to me one time, I was literally in tears because my business was failing. I was literally in tears. And this guy goes, Paul, what's wrong? I says, I can't sell. And this was another lesson, which was listen to your friends who know you. And sometimes we don't know our own gifts. So sometimes what you do is you say to somebody, a friend of yours, what if you were in a pinch and you were in a struggle and you didn't know what to do, what would you turn to me for? Well, what my friend would have turned to me for was teaching. He said, you're a gifted teacher. I said, Paul, don't sell, just teach. And that's what I did is I went on the radio and I just started teaching. And people all of a sudden started beating a path to my door. So that was it. First one, don't try to make it safely to death. It ain't going to work. The second thing was these older people would have spent more time contemplating. And the question is, what do you contemplate? And a lot of times, we don't think about this, but everybody in here has a purpose. We all have a reason for being, but how the heck do you get to what your purpose is? How do you know what it is? And there's an exercise I give you, and you might just write this down or just remember it. I did this with an 83-year-old woman in counseling, because I'm doing counseling 2 days a week in Hendersonville, and I do counseling. I'm going to be dropping back to 1 to 2 days a week after I graduate. But I was working with an 83-year-old lady that was just despondent. She was like, oh no, I just have so many regrets in life, and it's so terrible. And I said, okay, let me ask you this. Have you ever seen the movie A Christmas Carol? And she goes, yeah. And I said, at the end, Scrooge, he's visited by 3 ghosts, and the one that he fears the most is the ghost of Christmas yet to come, because he realizes that he has wasted his life. And what he does, he dusts off his tombstone, and he says, is this it? Can it be different? Can there be something different? So what I want you to do, I said to her, is write down all of the things that you want to do to feel you lived a life without regret. Where do you want to go? Who do you want to meet? Who do you want to spend time with? What do you want to learn? What do you want to own? What do you want to have? Whatever those things are. And she wanted to go to France. She wanted to have a big house in the Northeast, I think it was. And she's going on and on. And she's 83. She's probably not going to France. She's probably not going to go. She's kind of broke. She didn't have a lot of money. She's probably not going to end up with that house. But what I did is I said this, okay, now this is your bucket list. Now what I want you to do is I want you to take those things, those items, and I want you to put next to them, what is the value that you hold? Why do you want to do these things? Why is this important to you? Well, one of the reasons she wanted to go to France was beauty. She wanted to experience God's creation. And I said, do you have to go to France to do that? And she goes, no, I guess I don't. And we went through each one of those lists, and we determined that she didn't have to have money to do any of those things. And what you will learn about yourself is that a lot of times you don't need money to do anything that's important to you. Money is just a tool to express what you value. They did a study of college students, and they said, hey, which sounds weird coming from a financial planner, right? But they did a study of college students, and they said, are you going to chase intrinsic or extrinsic values? What are your goals? Intrinsic was like relationships and those types of things. Extrinsic was power, success, fame, money, cars, houses. They found pretty much without exception that people they all met their goals, interestingly, in the study. They all met their goals, so what they wanted, intrinsic or extrinsic. But what they found was the people that chased after extrinsic were infinitely less happy than the people, and we all know that. We all get that. They were infinitely less happy. But why is it we chase the extrinsic? Why do we chase the nice house? And I'm going to tell you, I learned this from psychology. One of the premier methods of working with people in counseling is what's called the emotionally focused therapy. And it's the idea that every last one of you, your greatest desire is to attach to other people. You want to know that you matter, that you're important, that you're loved, that somebody has your back, that you're seen by them. Everybody desires it. Now, God can be that attachment figure. You can have that attachment figure, but some people, as the little girl that was crying in the night and her dad comes in and says, Daddy, and he's going, honey, God's with you. And she goes, I want something with skin on. And that's what we all desire. Interestingly, when we chase after those things, a lot of times what we're trying to do is we want the really nice house to show people that we made it, that we're important, that we're successful, that we're worth being around. It comes back to attachment. We all want to be attached, and we all want people to think that we're somebody. That's what happens so often. We want people to think we're somebody because we're driving this really nice car. But there's a really interesting secret about humans. And that secret is that, you know what? When you show your flaws, if you have this perfect thing out there on social media that your life is perfect, all of a sudden you're plastic. You're not real. And not only that, you're not as likable. Because we like somebody that has flaws. We like somebody that's kind of a little bit sharing life in a real way. So that's what happens with people. You know, they get to the end of that life and they realize they chased things, they chased stuff, and they were running down the wrong road the whole time. Got to watch myself. How much time do I have? Because I could go on for 3 hours. You want another 15? 10, 15? Okay, if you guys have questions, I'll stop for questions too. Okay, thanks. So the third thing that people would do is they would like to create something that survived beyond themselves. Fascinating book for any of you guys that are readers. It's From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. Ran a think tank in Washington. He's on an airplane, and it's dark, they're flying overseas, and he hears a voice behind him. And the voice is going, nobody cares about me. Nobody's going to remember me. I'm not important. And his wife's going, oh, honey, you shouldn't talk that way. And he says, like, I'm doing work, and I'm going, I got to tune in what's going on. There's something going on behind me. He's listening to this guy behind him. He's, I don't even remember what I'm working on. Land, lights come up in the airplane. He looks back, and it's an incredibly famous actor and military. I think he was a military hero. And he's like going, whoa, this guy is like, nobody cares about me. Nobody's going to remember me. And everybody on the plane, when they see the lights come up and they see him, they're going like, you are such an inspiration. And the guy lit up. But the lesson was that we probably won't be remembered for what we create. We probably won't be remembered for our career. We probably won't be remembered for most of the things that we chased after. This may sound bizarre, but one of my favorite books in the Bible is Ecclesiastes, because it basically says that. It's striving after the wind. You know, people are going to forget who we are, but there's one group of people that won't forget who you are, who you have been to them, and that is your family, your friends, and those people close to you. And that's what we want to develop as in regards to a group of people. You know, when we want to try to build something that survives beyond us, that's what survives beyond us. And the other thing that when I was speaking to this group, is I said, you know, the other thing is this. When you're young, like you guys are, we talk about diversification and investing, spreading your money out. You know, it's fascinating because if you look at Ecclesiastes, all of the Nobel Prize winning research on investing is in Ecclesiastes. Spread your money out between 7 to 8 places. You don't know what calamity will befall the earth. Diversification. There are literally 7 to 8 asset classes in investing that diversify an investor. Interestingly, Solomon should have won a Nobel Prize almost 3,000 years ago. Plant in the morning, plant in the afternoon. You don't know whether one will do good or whether both will do well. You put things together when you invest that have dissimilar price movement, low correlation. It's literally in Ecclesiastes. But you know, the interesting thing is Solomon had all of this stuff in there, and a lot of times we forget about it. But here's the thing, diversification is super, super important when you're older. When you're younger, it's not as important. But diversification in how you earn income is going to be incredibly important. You guys live in a world that is changing really, really fast. Now, I talked about Dr. Hyde's talking about, you know, my being a serial collector of degrees. I am, simply because I want to be so diversified that I'm always necessary. I always kiddingly say that to my wife. You know, she'll say, can you fix this? And I'll fix it. And she'll go, how do you do it? How did you do that? And I'll go, I can't tell you because then I won't be necessary anymore. And she's just like, oh, you're an idiot. But that's it. It's just life is about serving other people. And we live in a world that has moved from a service economy to an information, or from a manufacturing economy to a service and an information economy. So getting as much information and constantly pursuing higher education, I think, is critical. So that's hence why I have promised myself I will continue to grow in that area, because I never want to get to the point where I'm just yesterday's news. Now, I'll stop for questions, because there's one thing I want to tell you about what Arthur Brooks said that was really, really impactful. We go through two basic stages in life that are driven by our psychology. The first stage in life, you are driven by what's called fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence is your ability to solve problems, create things, and come up with new ideas. And maybe you can solve math problems in your head like older people. Sometimes it's just not as easy as it used to be. It really gets down to it. Fluid intelligence is what you typically will find that grows until the age of about 45. And then it starts to wane. And you typically get what's called your half-life of your career. Between 20 and 45 is about 20 years. That's where you're really growing in your career, and that's where you're going to be shooting upward. And patience is the virtue then. You're constantly going to be learning and gaining information. And you're going to go through trials and tribulations. The trials are not bad, they're good. Failure is only failure if you quit. Babe Ruth forever had the home run record, 714 home runs. And then all of a sudden they got beaten. But a lot of people forgot what he was known for as well, which is having more strikeouts than anybody else. He struck out more than anybody else. So failure is something that comes in those years. And don't beat yourself up if you try something and you fail. It's like Edison with a light bulb. Sir Thomas, you tried 1,000 different things in a light bulb that didn't work. How do you feel about all those failures? And his answer was great. No, I found 1,000 things that didn't work to make a light bulb. Don't look at it that way. Look at it as, okay, let's keep going. It's only failure if you stop. Then what you look at is, so you got, fear of failure. And fear of failure drives people so often. So you got fluid intelligence, and you're going to get lots of failures. Your second half of life is really cool, because what you end up with is what's called crystallized intelligence. It's what the Bible refers to as wisdom. And the beauty of it is we become better teachers, better and better the older we get. Some of your best professors are in their 60s and 70s. It's because the wisdom that you've gained of all the past successes and failures are with you that you can pass on to other people. So a lot of people go, I'm just going to try to get to retirement. I think, oh man, what a waste of all that knowledge and that talent. Getting all the way to those years when you have the most to contribute, and then you just kind of go off into the sunset. And what we get to do at this stage of our lives is now pass that information on and help other people. But what that means is we've got to approach life not like Americans approach art. How does an American approach art? How am I going to make a piece of art? Well, give me a canvas, and I'm going to start making pretty pictures in it, right? So I'm going to add paint here, and I'm going to add paint here, and I'm going to add. A lot of times if you go overseas, how do they approach art? I got this big block of marble, and I'm going to chip away everything that isn't David in the statue of David, right? As we get older, what happens is we start to give up those things that aren't important, that aren't us, and take away things. And you will learn as you get older the essence of who you really are. And that's part of life, is taking all of this stuff and little by little going down and getting rid of all those things that aren't important anymore, that don't define you. I was counseling a guy yesterday that was just despondent because his son beat him in tennis. And I said, you were probably the bomb in tennis when you were 13, weren't you? And he said, yeah. I said, it doesn't define you anymore. It's not who you are. You must decrease while he increases, to use a Bible passage. That's the deal. And lastly, for me, this is what's really, really critical. I was a late bloomer when it came to Christianity. I was 25 years old. I will never forget saying to my wife-to-be, Christianity is just the opiate of the masses. It's just a bunch of, anytime you want to really mess somebody up, quote marks. It's really great. It's just a bunch of garbage. It's, this people made up these stories, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, oh, really? And I said, yeah. So she goes, hang on a second. She walks to the back of her apartment, and she comes out with this little book by a guy named Paul Little, Know Why You Believe. It got into apologetics. It got into history, archaeology. It got into science, laws of thermodynamics. Things do not go from a lower state to a higher state. They go from a higher state to a lower state. So it gets into that, and I will never forget going like this. I go, I was wrong. I was humble enough to go, I was wrong. And then what ended up happening is I started reading the Bible. And I found that all of the stuff that I had learned and all the motivational garbage that I've been studying for years was all in there in code. It was all there, what it took to be successful. What I needed is I needed a permission slip to say, you can trust this thing and you can actually believe it. Because I wouldn't read it before because I was like, this is garbage. And the reality of it was I was wrong. And what happened is it sent me on a mission that every single year, I go through the Bible from front to back. Every single year. And it's just a discipline I have, and I pick up something new every time, and I pick up something I can use in my life. So I can't encourage you enough to do the same, because I think it changes lives, and it changed mine. Thanks, everybody. If you guys have any questions, by all means. Thank you. Are you guys going to give away more books? So, yeah. All right. All right, good.
Tell us a little bit about each one of these.
Yeah, so the first book, Confident Investing, what I did is the guy that won the Nobel Prize, I studied under Rex Sinquefield. Every time you see a stock market chart, Rex Sinquefield, Roger Ibbotson are the two guys that did the research on the stock market going back to the 1920s. I studied under them. I studied under Ken French. He's a Dartmouth guy. Eugene Fama won the Nobel Prize in 2013, studied under him. Harry Markowitz is on the board of advisors for the fund company that I work with. He won the Nobel Prize in 1990 for how you put a portfolio together and maximize expected return for a given level of risk. So what I did is I decided to take what they were teaching and break it down to where people just looked at it and they kind of got it. It made sense. My belief is that you can understand in investing, and if you don't understand something, you will fear it. So what happens is I will make all kinds of mistakes because I don't understand what I'm doing, and trial and error is not a good way to learn about investing. So that's what I did is I put that book together. The other book that I did is I put that together based on 30 years of financial planning experience, and it was just a model. I wanted to build a model on how you create a good financial plan. And my concept was that you got the moat and you got the castle. Your castle is how you build wealth. You're going to be putting wealth in an area. You're going to have savings accounts, retirement accounts, 403bs, 401ks, and IRAs. And anybody in feudal times that had a lick of sense, what did they do when they had a castle? They put a moat around it. So that's your risk management. So that is how I built both of those books. And I talk a little bit about, how do you save? How do you put money aside? How do you get your mindset right? There are two types of people in the world, people that save first and spend what's left over. People that spend first and then save what's left over. The people that save first and spend what's left over, they are the ones that these people always turn to in need. And I would always say, which group do you want to be in? I don't want to be in this group because there's nothing ever left over to save. So what ends up happening is we end up broke at the end of our lives. And the reality of it is money is just a tool to express what you need and what is really important to you. But what's really important about money is it gives you options. It gives you freedom to do things that you might not have if you don't have that. And money is gained by adding value economically in other people's lives. That's where it comes from. So how do I add value in other people's lives economically? I have got to be others focused. Everybody remember Maslow's hierarchy? I need air, food, water, clothing, shelter, all that. That's the base of it. If I don't have those things, I can't move up. Well, what Maslow basically said is we have a hierarchy of needs that we have to fulfill. And the very top of it is self-actualization. In the middle, he says we need to be loved. And I read a book that was called What Happy People Know, and this guy just said something that was so profound I had to remember it. And it has to do with being a successful business owner, completely. He said, I don't agree that you need to be loved. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, because that's sort of, yeah, we do need to be loved. But he made a twist on it, which I thought was really good. He said, you need to love. Because if you need to be loved, you give control over to that person that can give or withhold love from you. It puts you in a really precarious position as a human. If you are the initiator of love like Jesus was, then love is going to come your direction. But that is the key to being a successful person, is to be other-centered and focused on them and loving them. And when I'm up here speaking to you guys, I'm naturally a shy person. But I look at myself as being up here just loving on you guys. That's it. I'm just giving you guys the best stuff I got. Because that's what it's about. Go forth and conquer. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sure he'd be willing to sign your book if you got a book.
Oh, Lord, my signature's not worth anything except it's on a check.